Ditched on her wedding day, she takes a nanny job with a millionaire and finds the love. Hello everyone, before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It's quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let's dive into the story. After a few weeks, Sarah had slowly started to adjust to her new life. The mansion was quiet and serene, a stark contrast to the hustle and bustle of her old life. She spent her days caring for Ethan's children, and in the evenings, she would retreat to her small quarters, trying to find peace in the silence. It wasn't the life she had imagined for herself, but it was comfortable, at least for now. Ethan, too, had become a presence she couldn't ignore. He wasn't just the millionaire she had assumed him to be. He was patient with his children, kind when he spoke, and though he rarely showed it, there were moments when Sarah saw a glimpse of vulnerability in him. Still, Sarah kept her distance. She had to. She couldn't afford to get too close to him, especially with her past still hanging over her like a dark cloud. Ethan had his own life, his own complications. She couldn't get involved. But as the days passed, her feelings for him began to grow. The small, seemingly insignificant moments between them, the casual smiles, the brief conversations in the kitchen started to mean more than she ever thought they would. One evening, after the children had gone to bed, Sarah found herself in the living room, sipping tea alone. Ethan walked in, his posture rigid as usual. He glanced at her and gave a small nod. "You're up late," he said, his voice soft but filled with an undeniable warmth. Sarah looked up, a little startled. "Yeah, I couldn't sleep," she said, trying to smile. Ethan hesitated before sitting down across from her. "It's been a while since I've had a quiet evening," he said. There was something about his words that made Sarah pause. Was he trying to connect with her, or was it just small talk? She wasn't sure, but she couldn't help but feel a bit of relief. For the first time in weeks, she didn't feel quite so alone. They talked for hours, about everything and nothing at all. Sarah found herself laughing at his dry humor, and for a brief moment, she forgot about her pain, about her past. She was lost in the moment, in the connection they were beginning to build. The next few days were more of the same. They spent time together in the evenings, talking about their lives, their dreams, and their fears. Ethan shared bits and pieces of his past, and Sarah couldn't help but be drawn to him more and more. It wasn't just the way he treated her. It was his honesty, his willingness to open up. He wasn't the perfect man, but he was real. And that was something Sarah had never experienced before. But still, she tried to keep her emotions in check. She didn't want to fall for him. She had been burned before, and she wasn't ready to risk it again. As much as she enjoyed their late-night conversations, she couldn't let herself fall into the trap of believing in fairy tales. She had to remember why she was here in the first place, to move on from the heartbreak, to rebuild her life. But despite her best efforts to keep her distance, Sarah couldn't help the way her heart fluttered when Ethan would walk into the room. It was small, almost unnoticeable, but it was there. She couldn't deny it. One evening, as Sarah was preparing dinner, she overheard Ethan on the phone in the next room. He was speaking in hushed tones, his words clipped. Sarah couldn't help but overhear bits of the conversation. "I can't keep doing this," Ethan said quietly. "I don't know how much longer I can keep pretending." Sarah froze, her heart racing. Was he talking about her? She wasn't sure, but something about his tone made her feel uneasy. She quickly brushed it off, telling herself she was just overthinking. But as the night wore on, she couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. The next day, Ethan seemed distant. He didn't say much, and when he did, his words were curt. Sarah couldn't understand what had changed. She tried to ignore it, but her mind kept racing. Had she done something wrong? Was she reading too much into their connection? Later that evening, as Sarah was tucking the children into bed, Ethan came to find her. He was standing in the doorway, his eyes filled with an emotion she couldn't quite place. "Sarah, can we talk?" he asked, his voice hesitant. Sarah nodded, her heart pounding in her chest. They walked into the living room, and Ethan sat down on the couch. "I need to apologize," he said, looking down at his hands, "for the way I've been acting. It's just..." Things have been complicated for me lately, and I didn't want to drag you into it. Sarah sat down beside him, confused. Complicated? She asked. Ethan sighed, rubbing his eyes. My life is a mess. I've been dealing with things I can't explain. And I know I've been distant, but it's not because of you. It's because I've been trying to figure out my own emotions. Sarah didn't know what to say. She had never seen him like this, vulnerable, open. Ethan, she said softly, her voice trembling. I'm not here to judge you. I'm here to help. Ethan looked at her, his eyes locking with hers. For a moment, everything felt still, as if the world around them had stopped. Then, slowly, Ethan reached for her hand. I didn't expect this, he whispered. I didn't expect to feel this way about you. Sarah's heart skipped a beat. She could feel it now, the tension between them, the unspoken connection. Was this it? Was this the moment everything would change? The days that followed were filled with a new sense of tension and possibility. Ethan had confessed his feelings for Sarah, and though they hadn't explicitly said anything more, the air between them had shifted. Every glance, every brush of the hand seemed to carry a deeper meaning, and Sarah couldn't ignore the way her heart fluttered every time he was near. But she knew she couldn't just dive in without thinking. Her past was still there, lingering in the back of her mind. She had trusted once before, and it had hurt her deeply. Could she trust again? Was this really what she wanted? Or was she simply filling a void left by someone who had abandoned her? The more she tried to push those thoughts away, the more they crept back in. Ethan wasn't just a man. He was a millionaire. A man with responsibilities, with complications, a life that was far beyond what Sarah had ever known. And yet, despite their differences, he had opened up to her, shared a part of himself she wasn't sure anyone else had seen. Still, doubts remained, and Sarah found herself torn. One evening, as she was preparing dinner for the children, she couldn't help but overhear Ethan's conversation on the phone again. This time, he was speaking with someone from work, his voice a little sharper, a little more stressed than usual. I can't keep putting this off, he said. I have to make a decision, and it can't wait any longer. Sarah's heart sank as she listened. Was this about her? Was he thinking about ending their arrangement? Before she could let her mind spiral any further, the children burst into the kitchen, pulling her attention away. She quickly masked her unease with a smile and finished preparing dinner. But the question still lingered in her mind. What decision was Ethan talking about? As the evening wore on, Ethan seemed more withdrawn than usual. He barely said anything during dinner and quickly excused himself after the meal. Sarah tried not to take it personally, but it was hard not to. She had always been a keen observer, and right now, everything about his behavior felt like a red flag. It wasn't until much later that evening, after the children had gone to bed, that Ethan approached her. He stood in the doorway, his face a mixture of exhaustion and resolve. Sarah, he began, his voice low and serious. Can we talk? Sarah's stomach flipped at the sound of his tone. She nodded, following him to the living room. He sat down on the couch, his hands clasped in front of him. I need to be honest with you, he said, his eyes meeting hers. I've been thinking about what I said the other night, and I want to make sure you understand something. I never expected to feel this way about you. But I've got a lot going on, and I don't want to drag you into something you're not ready for. Sarah felt her chest tighten. She opened her mouth to respond, but the words didn't come. She didn't know what to say, how to explain that she had started to feel the same way about him, that her heart had opened to him in a way she hadn't anticipated. But instead of speaking, Ethan continued. I know I've been distant lately. Work has been chaotic, and I have a lot of things I need to figure out. But I don't want to lose what we have. His words hit her like a wave, and for a moment, she could hardly process them. He didn't want to lose what they had. But what did they have? Was it more than just an arrangement? Was it something real? Slowly, Sarah sat down beside him, her heart racing. Ethan, she said, her voice soft. I don't know what this is either. But I do know that I don't want to be just someone you hire. I want to be more than that. I want to know if this can be real. Ethan's expression softened, and for the first time in what felt like forever, Sarah saw a genuine smile cross his face. I'm glad you said that, he said quietly, because I've been thinking the same thing. And in that moment, the tension that had been building between them finally released. Ethan leaned in, closing the space between them, and for the first time, they kissed slowly, tentatively, as if both of them were unsure of what the next step would bring but willing to take it together. The kiss was soft but full of meaning, a promise of something more. As they pulled away, Sarah couldn't help but smile, her heart swelling with a mixture of relief and excitement. It wasn't perfect, and it wasn't what she had imagined, but it was real. And for the first time in a long time, she felt like she had a future worth fighting for. Ethan took her hand gently, his thumb brushing across her knuckles. "I'm not perfect, Sarah," he said quietly, "and I don't have all the answers. But I want to figure this out with you, if you'll let me." Sarah nodded, her eyes locked with his. "I'm willing to try, Ethan. I'm willing to see where this goes." As they sat there together, hand in hand, Sarah realized that sometimes the best things in life came when you least expected them. And maybe, just maybe, she had found something real in the midst of her heartbreak. The days that followed felt like a dream to Sarah, a whirlwind of emotions she hadn't expected. Ethan was different now, more present and attentive, and the connection between them deepened with every passing day. They spent more time together, not just as employer and nanny, but as two people genuinely getting to know each other. Ethan's children had warmed up to her, and although the job was still demanding, it no longer felt like a burden. She wasn't just taking care of them. She was becoming part of their world. And for the first time since everything had fallen apart, Sarah felt like she was finally finding her place. One afternoon, after spending hours with the kids at the park, Sarah returned to the mansion feeling a sense of contentment she hadn't known in a long time. She walked into the house, the familiar sound of her footsteps echoing in the grand entryway. Ethan was sitting at the kitchen table, his laptop open in front of him, but when he looked up and saw her, a soft smile crossed his face. "How was the park?" he asked, his voice warm. "The kids had a blast," Sarah replied, setting her things down. She felt the weight of the day lifting as she looked at him, her heart swelling. He seemed different, softer somehow, and it made her want to take a chance on him. "I was thinking," Ethan continued, his eyes searching hers. "We've both been through a lot, and I think it's time we stop pretending that this is just some arrangement. I want to be with you, Sarah. I'm ready to give this a real shot, whatever it takes." His words hit her like a wave, and for a moment, she could hardly breathe. She had been afraid of getting too close, afraid of what might happen, but now it seemed like he was willing to take the leap with her. Sarah took a step closer to him, her heart racing. "Ethan," she said softly, her voice trembling, "I want to be with you too. I've been scared, but I don't want to let that fear stop me anymore. I'm ready, if you are." Ethan stood up, closing the distance between them, and in one smooth motion, he took her hand in his, holding it as if he never wanted to let go. "I'm all in, Sarah," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "I want to build a future with you, and I'm willing to do whatever it takes to make that happen." The words were simple, but they carried more weight than anything Sarah had ever heard. They both knew there was no turning back now. But as they stood there together, hand in hand, it felt like the beginning of something beautiful. As the days turned into weeks, their relationship grew stronger, and although there were still moments of doubt, they faced them together. Ethan was committed to making this work, and Sarah, for the first time in a long while, believed that she could trust him. She began to see a future with him, a life that wasn't defined by the pain of her past but by the love they were building together. One evening, after putting the children to bed, Ethan invited her to the terrace for a quiet dinner. The stars were out, the soft glow of the city lights below, and for a moment, everything felt perfect. They sat at the table, the candles flickering in the breeze. And Sarah found herself smiling at him, her heart full. "I never thought I'd end up here," she said, her voice soft. I was so sure I was never going to trust anyone again." Ethan reached across the table, taking her hand in his. "I know," he said gently. "I know it hasn't been easy for you, but I'm grateful you gave me a chance. I'll never take it for granted." Sarah looked at him, her eyes searching his. "You're not like anyone I've ever known," she said quietly. "You've been patient with me, and I don't know what I did to deserve it." Ethan smiled, brushing a strand of hair from her face. "You deserve everything, Sarah," he said, his voice low and sincere. "I'm just lucky to be the one who gets to be with you." For the first time since the day she was left at the altar, Sarah felt the weight of her past lift. She wasn't the same person she had been when she walked into this mansion all those weeks ago. She was stronger now, and the pain of her past no longer defined her. Instead, she was building a new life, a new future, with someone who saw her for who she really was, not as a broken woman, but as someone worthy of love and happiness. As Ethan leaned in to kiss her, Sarah knew that this was just the beginning. She wasn't sure what the future would hold, but she knew one thing for sure. She wasn't going to face it alone, and that was enough. As the days passed, Sarah felt herself settling deeper into her new life with Ethan. They had grown even closer, their bonds strengthened by the time they spent together, the laughter they shared, and the quiet moments of understanding. The children had become a part of her heart, and she couldn't imagine her life without them now. Ethan, too, seemed to be opening up in ways she hadn't expected. He was no longer the distant billionaire who kept his emotions locked away. He was someone she could talk to, confide in, and even laugh with. They had started sharing more personal moments, going on walks together in the evenings, discussing their hopes and dreams. For the first time in a long while, Sarah felt like she was exactly where she was supposed to be. But, as much as she wanted to let go of her fears, there was still a part of her that couldn't help but worry about the future. What if things didn't work out? What if she was just a temporary part of Ethan's life, something he'd outgrow? These thoughts nagged at her, but she tried to push them aside, reminding herself that she deserved this happiness, that she had every right to embrace the love that was blossoming between them. One evening, as Sarah was putting the children to bed, Ethan came to find her. There was a look in his eyes, a seriousness that caught her off guard. "Sarah, we need to talk," he said, his voice low. Her heart skipped a beat. "What's wrong?" she asked, suddenly feeling a tightness in her chest. Ethan took a deep breath, then walked over to where she was standing, taking her hands in his. "I've been thinking about us," he began, "and I want you to know that this isn't just a fling for me. You're not just a nanny, Sarah. You're someone I care deeply about, and I want more with you. I know I've been hesitant about certain things, but I've realized that I'm ready to take the next step with you." Sarah's breath caught in her throat. She wasn't sure she had heard him correctly. "What do you mean?" she whispered, her voice shaky. Ethan squeezed her hands gently. "I'm talking about us. A future. Together. I know it's been complicated, but I want to make it simple. I want to be with you, Sarah. For real. No more pretending." Sarah stood there, stunned. The words she had been longing to hear, the ones that had filled her thoughts and dreams, were finally spoken aloud. She had always been afraid of getting too attached, of letting her heart fully trust again, but now, standing here with Ethan, she realized that she wanted this. She wanted him. "I want that too," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "I've been scared, but I don't want to be scared anymore." Ethan's face softened, a tender smile spreading across his lips. He stepped closer to her, wrapping his arms around her in a warm embrace. "You don't have to be scared anymore," he whispered. "We'll face everything together. I promise." The weight that had been on Sarah's shoulders for so long seemed to lift in that moment. She wasn't alone anymore. She had found someone who wanted her, someone who would be by her side no matter what came next. She had finally found love, not in the way she had imagined, but in the way she had needed. And for the first time in a long time, she felt like she was exactly where she was meant to be. The next few days were filled with a renewed sense of joy and excitement. Ethan and Sarah began to make plans for the future, discussing everything from where they would live to how they would balance their careers and family life. They even started talking about getting married, something that once seemed so far out of reach for Sarah. As they made these plans, Ethan showed Sarah that he was committed to building a life with her, not just as a partner in love, but as an equal. He was willing to meet her halfway, to work through any challenges they might face, and that was something Sarah had never experienced before. One afternoon, as they sat in the garden, watching the children play, Sarah looked over at Ethan, feeling a sense of peace settle over her. "I never thought I'd be here," she said, her voice filled with wonder. "I never thought I'd find someone like you, someone who really sees me for who I am." Ethan turned to her, his eyes soft with affection. "You deserve all of this and more, Sarah," he said. "I'm just glad I get to be the one to give it to you." Sarah smiled, her heart full. She had finally found what she had been searching for, not just love, but acceptance, understanding, and the promise of a future built together. As she sat there, hand in hand with Ethan, watching the children laugh and play. She knew that this was just the beginning. Whatever challenges life might throw their way, they would face them together. And for the first time in a long time, Sarah felt like she had everything she needed to be truly happy. As the weeks went by, Sarah felt like she was living in a dream. The life she had once known, the pain of being left at the altar, the loneliness of being abandoned, seemed like a distant memory. Each day brought something new, something more beautiful, as she grew closer to Ethan. Together, they worked through their fears, their doubts, and the uncertainties of the past. They had conversations about everything, from small daily worries to big dreams for the future. They learned each other's strengths, weaknesses, and quirks, and the bond between them only deepened. Ethan was no longer the guarded, distant millionaire she had first met. He had become the man she trusted with her heart, the one who made her feel safe, loved, and valued. But even though everything seemed perfect, there were moments when Sarah still felt like an outsider, like she didn't fully belong in this world of luxury and wealth. Ethan had reassured her time and time again that none of that mattered to him. He loved her for who she was, not for her past or her circumstances. And yet, as much as she wanted to believe him, there was still a small voice in her head telling her she didn't fit. One evening, after a particularly long day with the children, Sarah found herself alone in the kitchen, sitting at the table with a cup of tea. Ethan had just left for a business trip, and the house felt emptier than usual. She was lost in her thoughts when she heard the sound of footsteps approaching. The door opened, and Ethan's voice echoed in the hallway. "Sarah?" he called out. She stood up, surprised to see him back so soon. "Ethan, I thought you were going to be gone all week," she said, trying to hide her surprise. Ethan smiled, walking toward her with a look of determination in his eyes. "I couldn't wait," he said softly. "I've been thinking about us a lot, and I realized I don't want to keep waiting. I want to make things official, Sarah. I want to make you my partner. Not just in this home, but in every aspect of my life." Sarah's heart skipped a beat. She wasn't sure what he meant at first, but then it hit her. Ethan was asking her to take the next step, to fully commit to their future together. "What do you mean? Make it official?" she asked, her voice shaky with anticipation. Ethan walked closer, kneeling down in front of her. "Sarah, I love you," he said, his voice sincere. "I want to marry you. I want you to be my wife. I can't imagine spending another day without you by my side." The room seemed to stand still for a moment. Sarah's breath caught in her throat, and her heart raced. This was it, the moment she had secretly longed for, the moment that would change everything. She had never imagined herself in a situation like this, but now that it was happening, she realized that this was the future she wanted. "Yes," she whispered, the words barely escaping her lips as tears filled her eyes. "Yes, I want to marry you too." Ethan's eyes lit up with joy, and he stood up, pulling her into a tight embrace. He kissed her forehead, then her lips, as if to seal the promise they had just made. "You've just made me the happiest man alive," he whispered. "I promise to make this work, Sarah. You and me, forever." As the days passed, Ethan and Sarah began planning their future together. They talked about the wedding, about where they would live, and about the family they hoped to build. For Sarah, the idea of marriage once felt like an unattainable dream, a fantasy that only happened to other people. But now, with Ethan by her side, it was becoming a reality. And for the first time in a long time, she felt like she truly belonged. The road to this moment had been long and filled with heartache, but it had also been a journey of growth, healing, and love. She wasn't just the woman who had been abandoned. She was the woman who had found love, who had found someone who saw her for who she was, and who loved her deeply. Ethan was everything she had ever dreamed of, kind, compassionate, and willing to build a future together. They were no longer two people trying to find their way. They were a team, united in their love and in their commitment to each other. One evening, as they sat together on the couch, Sarah looked at Ethan and smiled. "I never thought I could have this," she said softly. "I never thought I could have a love like this." Ethan turned to her, his hand gently resting on hers. "You deserve it, Sarah," he said. "You deserve all the love, happiness, and peace that's coming your way. And I'll be right here. Every step of the way." to make sure you have it." Sarah leaned her head on his shoulder, feeling a deep sense of gratitude wash over her. This was her life now. It wasn't perfect, but it was real, and it was filled with love. The love she had always wanted. The love she had never thought she could have. And as Ethan held her close, she knew that this was just the beginning of the beautiful journey they would share together. As the days flew by, Sarah and Ethan's lives began to settle into a peaceful routine. The wedding plans were coming together, and they had decided on a small, intimate ceremony, surrounded by close friends and family. Sarah couldn't believe how far she had come, how much her life had changed in just a few short months. From the moment Ethan had proposed, it felt like a weight had been lifted from her shoulders, like she was finally moving forward and leaving the past behind. She was no longer the woman left at the altar. She was the woman who had found a love worth fighting for. The days leading up to the wedding were filled with a mix of excitement and nerves. Sarah was overwhelmed with the love and support from the people around her, and the joy that Ethan brought into her life made her heart feel full in a way she had never known. She had found someone who truly saw her, who loved her unconditionally, and that was more than she had ever hoped for. But even as the wedding day grew nearer, there were still moments of doubt, moments when she questioned whether she was truly worthy of this happiness. Would she be able to live up to the love that Ethan had given her? Would she be able to be the woman he needed her to be? But each time she found herself lost in these thoughts, Ethan was there, reminding her of who she was and how much he loved her. He never wavered in his commitment to her, never let her doubt herself for even a second. The day of the wedding arrived, and everything seemed to fall into place. The sun was shining, the sky a perfect blue, and Sarah felt a rush of happiness as she walked down the aisle, her heart pounding in her chest. Ethan stood at the end, his eyes locked on hers, a soft smile on his face. In that moment, everything felt right. She wasn't just walking toward him. She was walking toward the future she had always dreamed of. The ceremony was beautiful, simple, and heartfelt. When they exchanged vows, Sarah couldn't stop the tears from falling, knowing that this was the beginning of something extraordinary. Ethan took her hands in his voice steady and full of love as he promised to stand by her, through every challenge and every joy that life would bring. "I will love you forever, Sarah," he said, his words filling her heart with warmth. "Through the good times and the bad, I will be with you, always." Sarah's voice trembled as she responded, "And I will love you, Ethan, for all that you are, and all that we will become together." When they kissed, it felt like the world faded away. There was no one else in the room, no distractions, just the two of them, united in this beautiful moment. The love they shared was undeniable, and Sarah knew in her heart that this was where she was meant to be. After the ceremony, the celebration continued with laughter, dancing, and more love than Sarah had ever experienced in her life. She was surrounded by the people who cared for her, and it was in those moments that she realized how far she had come. She wasn't the same woman who had walked into this mansion months ago, uncertain and broken. She was stronger, more confident, and ready to embrace the future with open arms. The reception was filled with joy, and Sarah couldn't help but smile as she looked around the room, seeing Ethan by her side, holding her close. They had built something beautiful, something real, and it was just the beginning. Later that evening, as they stood together on the balcony, looking out at the city lights below, Sarah couldn't help but reflect on everything that had brought her to this moment. She had never imagined her life turning out like this, never imagined she would find love again, let alone find someone like Ethan. But here she was, a woman who had been broken and rebuilt, ready to face whatever the future held with the man she loved by her side. "We made it," Sarah said softly, her voice full of wonder. Ethan smiled, pulling her closer. "We sure did," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "And we're just getting started." As they shared a quiet kiss, Sarah realized that her life was no longer defined by her past or the pain she had once felt. She was no longer a victim of circumstances. She was a woman who had found the love of her life, and together, they would face the world. No matter what came next, they would face it as a team, stronger than ever, with a love that would carry them through anything. The journey was just beginning, and Sarah couldn't wait to see where it would take them. As the months passed, Sarah and Ethan's lives continued to unfold like the pages of a beautiful story. They had found their rhythm, their balance, and together they built a life filled with love, laughter, and shared dreams. Ethan was more present than ever, always by her side, supporting her every step of the way. Their home was a sanctuary, a place where they could escape the pressures of the outside world and focus on each other. The wedding had been the beginning of a new chapter, but Sarah knew that their journey was far from over. One evening, as Sarah sat in the living room, reading a book, Ethan walked in, his usual calm demeanor replaced with a sense of urgency. He closed the door behind him softly and walked over to her, his brow furrowed. "Sarah, we need to talk," he said, his voice serious but gentle. Sarah put the book down, her heart suddenly racing. "What's wrong?" she asked, her eyes searching his. Ethan took a deep breath, sitting down beside her. "It's about work," he began, his tone thoughtful. "There's an opportunity overseas, a project that could change everything for me, us. But it would mean a move, and it would mean a lot of time away." Sarah listened intently, the weight of his words settling on her. Ethan's work had always been demanding, and she knew that his career had a way of pulling him in every direction. But the thought of him being gone for an extended period left her with a mix of emotions, pride for his success, but also fear of being left alone again. "What are you thinking?" she asked, her voice steady but laced with concern. Ethan turned to face her, his eyes softening. "I've been thinking about this a lot," he said. "And I want to be honest with you. I'm not sure how this is going to work if I take this project, but I know that I don't want to do it without you. I want us to go together, to build this next chapter side by side, wherever it takes us." Sarah's mind raced. The thought of moving to a new country, of stepping out of her comfort zone, was both exciting and overwhelming. But the most important thing was that Ethan wanted her with him. That, more than anything, meant the world to her. "You want me to go with you?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Ethan nodded. "Yes," he said simply. "You are my partner in everything, Sarah. I need you there with me, no matter where we are." The room felt still, the weight of his words sinking in. Sarah knew that this was a big decision, one that would change everything. It wasn't just about the move, it was about their future, about continuing to build something together. "Okay," she said, her heart swelling with love for him. "Let's do it. Let's go together." Ethan's face lit up, relief flooding his features. He reached for her hand, squeezing it tightly. "I promise you, Sarah, this is going to be an adventure, and I will make sure we face it together, every step of the way." As the weeks passed, they began to prepare for their new life. The logistics of the move were daunting, but they faced it head-on, supporting each other through every challenge. Packing up their lives, saying goodbye to familiar places, and stepping into the unknown was no small task, but they did it with the confidence that they were building a life they could be proud of. The night before their departure, Sarah stood in front of their bedroom mirror, looking at her reflection. She was no longer the woman who had been left heartbroken and lost. She had found her place, not just in Ethan's world, but in the world they were creating together. She had found love, security, and a future filled with promise. When she turned to Ethan, who was standing by the door, she smiled. "Ready?" she asked, her voice filled with excitement and a little nervousness. Ethan walked over to her, taking her hands in his. "I've never been more ready for anything in my life," he said, his voice filled with certainty. As they walked out of the house, hand in hand, they knew that the next chapter of their journey was about to begin. They had faced their fears, overcome the challenges of the past, and now they were ready to embrace the future together, wherever it might lead them. The world was waiting for them, and they would face it as a team, stronger than ever, with love as their foundation. As they drove to the airport, Sarah looked out the window at the city they were leaving behind. But instead of feeling sadness, she felt a sense of excitement. The unknown wasn't something to fear, it was something to embrace. With Ethan by her side, she knew she could face anything. And as they boarded the plane, ready for the next adventure, Sarah realized that her life had come full circle. From the heartbreak and uncertainty to the love and stability she now had, she had found everything she had ever wanted. And this was just the beginning. As Sarah and Ethan settled into their new life overseas, the world seemed to open up in ways they had never imagined. The move was both exhilarating and challenging, but they faced each hurdle together, building a new home, making new memories, and growing stronger as a couple with each passing day. Sarah had never imagined that her life would take this turn, from being abandoned at the altar to now embarking on a new adventure with the love of her life by her side. She had found her place in the world, and it wasn't defined by the pain of the past, but by the love and hope they had for the future. They traveled, explored, and built a life that was uniquely theirs. Ethan continued to thrive in his career, but what had once been his sole focus was now balanced with their shared life together. He made time for their love, for their home, and for their future. And Sarah saw how much he had changed in the best possible way. No longer was he the guarded man who kept his emotions locked away. With Sarah, he had found peace, knowing that love was the most important thing in his life. Every day, Sarah was reminded of how far they had come. She had not just found a partner. She had found a soulmate. Someone who saw her for who she truly was. Someone who loved her with all of his heart. She had let go of the fear that once held her back, and now, with Ethan, she embraced each new challenge as an opportunity to grow and evolve together. One evening, as they sat together on their balcony, overlooking the sparkling lights of the city, Sarah couldn't help but reflect on everything they had accomplished. "Do you ever think about how far we've come?" she asked, her voice soft but filled with wonder. Ethan smiled, his eyes filled with love as he looked at her. "Every day," he said, his voice steady. "You know, I always thought I had everything I needed in life. Wealth, success, freedom, but I never realized that true happiness comes from the people you love and the life you build together." Sarah leaned her head on his shoulder, feeling the warmth of his embrace. "I never imagined my life could be this way," she whispered, her heart full of gratitude. "I was lost for so long, but now, I feel like I've finally found my way. With you." Ethan kissed her forehead gently, his hand resting on hers. "You're my everything, Sarah," he said softly. "I'll spend the rest of my life making sure you never feel lost again." As the months went by, their bond only grew stronger. They built their new life with love and dedication, always finding joy in the simplest moments, cooking dinner together, laughing at inside jokes, and supporting each other through life's ups and downs. Sarah had found a love that was built on trust, respect, and mutual understanding, and she knew that nothing could ever tear them apart. They had faced their fears and their pasts, and together they had created something beautiful, a family, a life, a future. And as they looked toward that future, Sarah knew that no matter what came their way, they would face it together. With Ethan by her side, she felt invincible, ready to take on whatever the world had to offer. Life wasn't always perfect, but it was theirs, and that was enough. As they held hands and looked out over the horizon, Sarah couldn't help but smile. She had found the love she never thought she deserved, the love that had healed her, and the love that would carry her through the rest of her life. And as she turned to Ethan, her heart full, she knew that this was only the beginning of their story. They had built a foundation that could withstand anything, and together, they would continue to write their beautiful, unpredictable, and ever-growing love story, one chapter at a time. In this heartwarming tale of love, second chances, and unexpected turns, Sarah's journey from heartbreak to finding her soulmate unfolds in a series of unforgettable moments. After being left at the altar, Sarah's life seems shattered, but like many powerful millionaire stories, hers takes a dramatic twist when she meets Ethan, a man who not only changes her life, but also helps her rediscover the meaning of true love. As Sarah navigates through her pain, she finds solace in a new chapter, taking on a nanny role in Ethan's world, where wealth and status meet a raw, genuine connection. With every challenge, Sarah learns that millionaire stories aren't just about riches, they're about the depth of human connection, love, and resilience. As their relationship blossoms, Sarah and Ethan's story reveals that sometimes the greatest treasures aren't found in gold or assets, but in the bonds we create. The couple faces life's ups and downs together, proving that even in the most unexpected circumstances, love can thrive. This is not just one of the usual millionaire stories filled with luxury. It's a tale of trust, healing, and finding happiness with someone who values you beyond your past. By the end, Sarah realizes she doesn't just belong in Ethan's world. She's built a world of her own, full of love and new beginnings. Just like the most inspiring millionaire stories, where ordinary people achieve extraordinary happiness. If you're a fan of millionaire stories that focus on real emotions and transformative journeys, this touching tale is sure to warm your heart and inspire you to believe in the power of love.